in the next paragraph. What can we call the next step in this cycle?
They accept.
Acceptance, right? Finally. Acceptance. When you accept something, right, it's like you're accepting an idea, right? In this situation, what they're saying is that the decision makers, once again, the people who control the direction of the company, are saying that fine, we accept. You know what, we're doing something wrong. We need to change, right? But what the article is saying is that a lot of times, right, so publicly traded companies, like large companies, every quarter they have a call with their shareholders and with their investors. They have an investors call where they talk about what are our ideas for the future, what are we working on, right? What products do we have ready, right, that we're developing right now? Like we talked about product development, right? So what products are we developing? What are we going to do in the future, basically? And so this is typically a time where they talk about acceptance, and they'll say that, okay, yeah, you know what, we're working on some great ideas. I think we're looking at our competition and we know what we have to do, right? So they start saying that we're gonna start doing all of these wonderful things that are going to help us become profitable again, right? But there's a problem, isn't there? Because acceptance is just one piece of it. Acceptance is you saying, yes, there is a problem. In order to really make your company successful again, what's the next step after acceptance? What does the author say? What does the author say in the next section? There's a difference between doing something and saying that you're going to do something, right? You remember when you were in high school, and this happened to me a lot, you know when you did badly on an exam, right? What was a class that you guys hated in high school? Colin, what was a class that you didn't like in high school? Science, right? So remember when you had to take tests in science, and maybe you wouldn't do too well? Remember how you would tell yourself, I'm going to study harder next time, right? We've all had that situation, right? You do bad on an exam, and you're like, I'm going to study harder next time, right? But does it even matter if you say, I'm going to study next? Like, what matters? What actually determines, right? What actually causes you to do better? You have to study. You actually have to do the studying, right? So it's one thing if you're really angry for one day, right? Or you're like crying, or you're like upset, and you're punching walls, or you're like, you know what, I'm so mad at myself, like I should have done better on this exam, right? But then the next day, nothing changes, right? You're not studying, you're kind of running around with your friends or whatever it is. But I used to have this problem a lot. I would like study for like 15 minutes and then I would just run outside and start playing sports, right? And so the difference, it's the same thing. Acceptance is us when we say that we're going to study harder, right? That we're going to do better next time, right? The fourth step, which is the most critical step that is going to take the word failing out, is going to be doing. Right? This is absolutely critical. Remember we talked about the word critical. Critical means that it's the most important thing. Right? You've done this entire hard work. For years you denied. For years and years you denied. Then for more years you resisted. Right? Finally you accepted. But all of these years spent while your company's share prices just keep going further and further lower, it only matters if you're actually going to do something now. Right? It only matters if you're going to do something about it. You've done the hard work of identifying what the problem is. I party too much with my friends, which is why I'm not studying, which is why I do badly in my college classes, right? So you've identified the problem. But what are you going to do to make things better, right? And that is the difference between companies that are stagnant, like Apple, and other companies that are actually able to turn things around, right? That expression is really important, turning the ship around, right? So it's kind of like this. Imagine, I'm going to wipe these out for a second, right? This is like, remember in the English language we use a lot of metaphors, right? We use a lot of illustrations. So this is the water, right? And this is the ship, right? This is a ship. So you're moving in this direction, right? But then there's like these jagged rocks, right, in the water. It's like the Titanic, right? If you keep moving in this direction, what's going to happen? Cohen, what will happen to the ship if it keeps moving towards these rocks? Right? It's going to ship. So what do you have to do to make sure the ship will not sink? Shen, what do you have to do?
Change the direction.
To change the direction, right? You have to turn the ship around. See, the ship has to go from this direction, turn 180 degrees, and start moving this way, away from the rocks. Right now, Yahoo's in this situation where they're drifting towards disaster, right? Pretty soon, they're going to start losing money. Right now, they're still making money, right? But they're not making anywhere near the type of money that their competitors are, right? So how can Yahoo turn the ship around? Right? How can they turn the ship around? So imagine this is Yahoo. Yahoo is this ship. So they have to turn the ship around, right? They got to go around 180 degrees. Otherwise, they're going to crash into the rocks, and that's the end of Yahoo, right? Either they'll go bankrupt, or another company will buy them for a really, really cheap price, right? That this is what happens to these types of organizations. So basically, like, it's kind of like how, like Nissan, right? Nissan had this huge issue. You remember when didn't they get bought by like Renault? Like Nissan basically got bought by a French company, right?
Yeah.
Another kind of half and half, right?
Yeah.
So Nissan, they weren't able to turn the ship around, right? They basically hit the rocks. And another company came and bought them for pretty cheap. It was basically the end of Nissan. The way that they were 20, 30 years ago, right? They were not able to change things, right? This is the reason why what happened. So then the article talks about what can you do in a situation like this? And what do you remember about what the author says? What are some of the ways that you can take yourself out of this situation? You have to be brave, right? You have to be bold, right? You have to show bravery. Right? This is very, very important. You have to do things that are very, very different, right? Because not changing means that we're just sailing towards the rocks. We're sailing towards the rocks, and one day we're going to hit the rocks. But if you're brave, if you show bravery, right, and you take bold decisions, right? You take bold decisions, right? You move your company in a completely different direction. You say that, you know what, we're going to enter a completely new market, right? Think of something crazy. It can't be something insane, right? But it has to be something that sort of makes sense, right? We're going to, they could say something even like, we're going to invest in space technology, right? We're going to invest in building spaceships. This is what we're going to do. Yahoo's going to become a spaceship manufacturer. Now that's a little crazy, right? And why do you think that's crazy? Like something like that, right? For them to say Yahoo's going to start building cars. What's the obvious answer? Why does that sound silly?
they don't have experience.
Yes, right? That's like me saying that I want to become a sumo wrestler, right? It doesn't make any sense because I've never done it in my life. I'm not big enough or tall enough to be a sumo wrestler, right? So it just doesn't make any kind of sense. I mean, sure, I can try it, I'll get killed, but you know, it's kind of one of those things that like they have no experience. But if they were to look at their competition and say, okay, you know what? Maybe we want to have some kind of agreement to, maybe Yahoo wants to start its own telecommunications, right? They want to become like a cellular service provider. Maybe we want to join with Verizon or something like that. They need to think, this is another thing, right? When you make bold decisions, this is an expression, right, in English, you're thinking out, of the box. You've probably seen this expression before, thinking outside the box. You're thinking out of the box, right? So imagine if this is a box, right? This is the Yahoo box. And you've always just been inside here, right? We've been inside, like all our ideas have been really, really safe. But doing that once again is simply keeping the ship in the same direction, right? If you want to make a bold decision, if you want to show bravery, you're going to have to think outside the box. You're going to have to take your company in a direction where it's never gone before. Because that's the only way to find success, right? They can't compete with Google anymore. They can't compete with Apple anymore. They can't compete with Microsoft. They're not in a position to do so. So they need to think about going in a completely different direction, right? I'll give you an example. In boxing, right? Imagine when you have a young boxer, right, who's really, really talented, and he has one trainer, someone who trains him, someone who teaches him, right? And let's say he fights 30, 40 fights, right? But he never loses. But then he faces an opponent, right, who has a style that he's never seen before. He's just completely like confused. He's like, he doesn't know how to fight this guy. And this guy beats him. Maybe beats him badly, right? Now, he could continue staying in the box, right? Staying with that trainer, right? Or maybe, I mean, there's a lot of things that he can change, right? He can maybe change where he's training. He can change who his coaches are. He can change where he lives, right? But the thing is, if you keep all of those things the same, you're still inside the box, right? You're floating in one direction. Maybe you'll go back and you'll fight other guys and maybe you'll win 40 more matches. But guess what? If you have to go back and fight that guy again, or someone who's like that guy, and this happens a lot in boxing, you're going to lose again. Because you haven't changed anything. Right? You haven't said that I'm going to learn from this, right? And I'm going to get better because of this. A bold decision in that sense would be, I'm going to go to a completely new trainer who's going to teach me new techniques that I can use, right, to fight this kind of guy, to beat this, that the next time I get a chance, I'm going to beat that type of guy, or I'm going to beat that guy again, right? Give me 2 years with a new trainer. That's thinking outside of the box. That's basically what Yahoo needs to do, right? So it's really, really interesting, and I think that it's difficult to say. It's difficult to say, you know, whether or not Yahoo will be able to be successful. Maybe it's too late. Maybe it's too late to turn the ship around, right? If that's the case, one day they're just going to get bought for 20% of what they're worth on the market, you know, because they're going to start losing money, right? But for instance, a lot of Japanese companies had this issue, right? Like from the 1950s till like the late 80s, till the early 90s even, right? The Japanese